Yeah, thanks again for doing this.
Oh, no problem at all. Like I said, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I tend to try to start from the beginning. So I
Okay.
usually start with do you remember like your first experiences with music? Was like music big in your house? And did you play any like instruments or like any musicians in your family, stuff like that?
Okay. I mean, for me, music. I mean, I remember my dad having records and stuff, but it wasn't a huge thing in my house. Like, it was more like a sports house.
Mm.
But I fell in really early with the Beatles. Like, I remember being in, I think, first grade maybe, and having like every single Beatles record on vinyl.
Oh wow.
And I was just really obsessed with it. And then, from there, I just basically became the kid that would sit with my first Sony tape recorder next to the radio, just trying to tape songs that I liked. So I was always sort of obsessed with music from a very early age. I tried playing a whole bunch of instruments, but I wasn't good at anything.
Mm.
And I think that might have been what led me towards rapping. Something I could do on my own. It was something I could train myself to do. I couldn't really do that with other instruments. I probably could have, but I didn't have any sort of the know-how to do it. Whereas, rap music, it's sort of its own instruction manual, so you could learn just by listening. I think it's a lot easier to pick up as a rapper. But yeah, to answer your question, for my family, music wasn't a major thing, but for me, it was sort of everything from the time I was little.
Were you writing before you started rapping? Like
Writing?
like anything at all?
No. I had dreams of being a stand-up comedian.
Oh, really?
But yeah, I never really wrote anything. I wasn't a very good student. I wasn't interested in school. I don't know if I had like ADHD or something and just went undiagnosed, but my parents they were just happy I wasn't getting into drugs and alcohol like a lot of people in my family. So I think as long as, I cruised through and didn't really, make any waves, they were fine with it. So I was smart enough that I could get by without doing any work and get like, C's and low B's, but I didn't do anything really beyond that. I just really listened to music a lot. That was my obsession. Like I was always a kid that would have like 200 tapes, and whatever music I was into, I would just hunt down every single facet of that music. That's really where I focused my energy. And it wasn't until I went to college and somebody asked me to write a rap for an answering machine because they knew that I was into rap music. And that was like the first thing I ever wrote, and it sort of just sent me off on that journey from there.
First of all, what stand-ups were you into?
I mean, geez, it was a long time ago, but I was really into like evening at the Improv type of stuff.
Okay.
So, I think I'm a little older than a lot of people that are in my sort of peer group. So it was like, Richard Belzer, I guess early Jerry Seinfeld, like Louis Anderson, whoever would be on that show I was into. I think like Paul Provenza was a name that I remember a lot. Sort of anybody that came up through those like early like 80s and 90s NBC shows. So like I was watching them when they were on Evening at the Improv, or HBO Comedy Hours, or I think MTV had like a half-hour stand-up show that they used to have on. So it was like just sort of that evolution. They sort of always tied in together. I think music and comedy were the two big areas that I focused on.
And what were you listening to a lot of different types of music like growing up?
Growing up, it was, it started with the Beatles, eventually went into like radio stuff like the Jay Giles Band and like the Little River Band. I remember being really into Queen. They had this album called The Game with like a crazy little thing called Love and another one, Bites the Dust. I was super into that stuff. Joan Jett, like stuff like that I was really into. And then MTV came and I got really into sort of heavy metal. I remember getting obsessed with like early Def Leppard stuff, like before Pyromania. um, Iron Maiden, stuff like that. And that eventually like evolved all the way through to like all the different variations of metal. So at first it was, like that stuff, everything you find in like Circus magazine, where it was like Motley Crue, Rat, Iron Maiden, all of that stuff, like the hair bands before they became like the commercialized hair bands, where like the labels found the formula. So once that happened, then I started moving into thrash. So it was Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, and then from there, like it moved into, I guess, I don't even know what it would be called. It was stuff like Murphy's Law and Stormtroopers of Death and stuff like that. So I guess this sort of weird hybrid of punk and metal. And then from there, like I went into punk, and during that time period, I think it was like around '88 that I started really getting into rap music. I think Scott Ian was wearing a Public Enemy shirt on a lot of the Anthrax stuff, and that made me sort of explore that. And through that I found MTV Raps, and through MTV Raps I found Big Daddy Kane, Special Ed, Eric B. and Rakim, Cool G Rap and Polo, everything like that. And once I got to rap, it was just like rap for like the next 15 years.
I was gonna say, in the documentary Adult Rappers, you mentioned Microphone Fiend, and you were into Special Ed. Do you remember like was there like a first specific rap or like person that you remember and you were like, all right, this is it?
It was probably Big Daddy Kane, I think, was the one that really stuck out to me. I remember, because where I grew up, and I think that my age led to a point where I was in this weird little pocket where nobody I knew listened to rap music. I was the only one. So I grew up in Westchester County, New York, which was like an hour north of the city. It was like a real dull suburb, and everybody I knew listened to either metal or like U2 and crap like that. And I had a younger brother who was like 4 years younger than me, so he was like right in the sweet spot. So he always had the good rap music, and it was kind of like my secret passion. So I would go home and I would sit in the driveway and shoot baskets and just play Big Daddy Kane, Long Live the King on a loop, just nonstop listening to that and shooting baskets in the driveway. That was the one that really was like, wow, this is cool and interesting. And then, like I started seeing like, it was like this group of supermen that were coming out, like these sort of like perfect idealized versions of what I thought a man should be. As like a 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's what you want to be when you grow up. You want to have the ladies, you want to have jewels, you want to have cars, you want to have everybody scared of you because you might knock them out. And then, like somebody like Special Ed came along, and he was cool, but he felt like he was more like me. Like I didn't see Special Ed as like this bigger than life figure. I just saw him as like this cool, witty guy. And I was like, that's what I want to see. That's like, to me, that's like what I really was like, this could possibly be something I could do. I didn't really have any idea of it, like a freestyle for myself, but he was like the first one that really caught my attention, that rap could be more than just, even though he was still bragging, but he was clever. And like that sort of combined the elements of comedy and music.
Yeah, I was going to ask, even like besides from hip hop, because I had DJ Mighty Mai on a little bit ago, and he talked about that. Just like there wasn't at that time, there wasn't a lot of white people like listening to hip hop. I was also
not at all.
But I was also going to say, like when you were listening to like punk and thrash stuff like that, were there other people listening to that?
Where I grew up, yeah, there were. I actually had friends that were in punk groups. Friends that I grew up, they're still playing in punk groups like Awkward Thought and stuff like that. I mean, I don't know if they're still around, but I used to run into them as their show was ending and our show was starting. But there were people that were into punk. Like I remember being, I think, in like 8th grade, getting the first Suicidal Tendencies record from my friend Warren Skelly, and just being like, "Holy crap, what is this?" And so it was definitely there. Just there wasn't really anybody that listened to rap. I mean, I had a few friends that dabbled, but nobody that was like obsessed with it. And it wasn't until I went away to college that I found people that were also really into rap music. And even then, it was like, it was mostly me. Like I was the white kid. That everybody, all the other white kids were like, "Oh, this kid." So it was a weird time, but I'm glad it was there, because it was something that changed the course, I think, of where I was going in my life.
Mm. So like high school, what did you go to college for, if you don't mind me asking?
What did I go for?
Yeah.
I started off as a communications major,
Okay.
and then I got like, started getting like real idealistic, and I started doing like I guess they were called ethnic studies at the time, and teaching. So it was like, like Native American history, African American history, and teaching. And then I started getting really into doing rap, and I got a new girlfriend, and I stopped going to class, and I ended up almost failing out. And I was just like, all right, I don't want to teach, I don't want to do this, and I just ended up being an African studies major, which again, it was like, here's the white kid, in the African studies major program, and obsessed with hip hop, only hangs out with black kids. It was, I could see on the outside looking in, people being like, who the fuck is this kid? But, it was just the path I went down. It was like, those were my friends, and those were the things that I was into. But it was because of hip hop. I don't think I would have taken that path if I didn't start listening to hip hop, and I wouldn't have known the people I know and had the friendship I've had and the relationships I've had and the understanding of the world if it wasn't for getting into rap. I mean, I think college ultimately ended up being sort of like, I went to college for rap at a certain point. Like, I was like, in class, I was writing rhymes. When I wasn't in class, I was rhyming with other people, or ciphering, or making songs, or trading tapes, or selling old CDs so I could get new CDs. It's sort of, I went to school for rap. It was where I learned how to rap, I think. My parents probably aren't happy about that. That's where I learned how to do everything.
So did you start recording in college, or was it just like freestyling type of?
It started as freestyling first, and then I don't know how I came up on it, but I got a karaoke machine. So it was like a dual cassette karaoke machine, and we used to just get singles that always had the instrumental on the B side, and we would just freestyle over them. So we had all these long freestyle tapes. We would do that, and that was just the thing everybody did. Like, people would just come through, drink some beer, smoke a little, and then we would all take turns rhyming. So there'd be like 20 people in a room, and everybody was rhyming. And as we all started getting older and getting a little more serious in our majors, there was a smaller and smaller group. And those of us that were in that smaller and smaller group started actually going into the studio. We had a radio station on campus that had a recording studio in it, so we would often go in there, and our friends had shows, so we would make promos for them, sort of like the old Stretch and Bob promos, but for whatever the crappy college radio show was.
Yeah. And
then, from there, it ended up, we would start going down to the city and doing shows, and, one thing led to another, to another, to another. It wasn't a plan, but it just started following a path after a while.
Was there much in the way of like open mics at that time? Stuff like that?
Not where I was, not up at school. I used to throw some because I was an RA, so it was something that I used to do. It's actually how I met like the people that I really got involved in rapping with, because it was me, and then there was this other kid, also a white kid. His name was Bill G, and he was from Queens, and he was like going through campus just tearing everybody, and he had been on Stretch and Bobbito, so he had like this reputation. And he came out to battle me at the open mic. And I didn't know he was coming to battle me, but we started rapping together, and we liked each other, and we liked each other's style. And he started taking me down to the city to do shows. So from there, we would go down to this place, the New York Poets Cafe in the Lower East Side, which was had this event called All That, and it was a monthly open mic where there was a jazz band playing, and it was a split session. So there was like, maybe 12 spots. It was 6 rappers and 6 spoken word poets. And, that's where we started doing our show, like our first ever shows, our first ever open mics. And it was a pretty cool scene. It was hosted by Bobbito. And, you had people coming in and out of there like Pumpkinhead, Yeshua Sire, this dude named Mums the Schema, who ended up becoming an actor. Like, he was on Oz and stuff like that. He was a dude that played poet on Oz. Saul Williams was in and out of there. Like, there was a lot of talent coming in and out. Cannabis used to go. Wordsworth and Punchline used to go. It was like this whole sort of downtown scene that was forming that I think, evolved into what became the indie hip hop scene in New York. But, it's really just like falling into the right place at the right time.
Yeah, obviously you just named some like legends there. I was gonna ask if there was anyone in particular like you remember seeing for the first time, or maybe like that you didn't know, like that had a reputation, stuff like that.
I think the very first night we met Yashwan Sire. We became friends with those guys right away. I had no idea who they were. I just remember seeing and seeing like people that were like MCs that knew what they were doing, that like looked like MCs, wore the clothes like MCs. Those guys, I remember being online and hearing somebody talking behind me and turning around and being like, "You're Pumpkinhead," because he had just dropped like this killer Bobito promo that we were all obsessed with. But the person that blew my mind, that I had never seen before or heard of before or had no reason to like because I always hated spoken word poetry, was Saul Williams. And like he just went on and it was like, oh my God. He did that poem where he's like, and I am public enemy number one. That makes 7. And it was just like, holy shit, this thing is amazing. And then we had to go on after him. It was like, I think we got booed off the stage. It was terrible. But that was like, he's the dude that I saw that and I was just like, holy crap. And I saw Mr. Liff as well. My girlfriend and I at the time went down to this club called The Cooler, because she heard this dude Mr. Liff was playing, and we went and we were the only people in the crowd, and it was him and Acrobatic and DJ Fax.
Oh wow!
And they just put on this insane show. Like I bought their vinyl and everything. I didn't even have a record player. And years later I became friends with them, and I was telling that story. But it was just like that. Liff and Saul Williams were the two that just blew my mind.
And
if you've ever seen Liff, he's like one of the best hip hop performers ever.
Yeah, actually, I think I have with like Cage a few years ago.
Yeah.
So when did you link up with like Adam's family, or like start to like really make serious relationships in that scene?
That was also New Eurekan Poets Cafe. We It's funny how we met them. It's actually, we met, there was like all these different factions at New Eurekan Poets Cafe. It was like all these crews of rappers. So everybody had like, there was like these 30-man crews. And we met this dude named Osiris Cloud. And he's still one of the best rappers I've ever heard to this day, but he's only got like 2 songs that I know of. He's the dude that did the artwork for the Cannibal Ox album, actually.
Okay.
So we met him at New Eurekan Poets Cafe, and we would like cipher with him. And at one point, he just asked us to be down with the crew. And we're like, yeah, okay. We wanted to be down with the crew. And at the time, it was like me, Wind and Breeze, and this one other dude named Angel, who was part of Hangar 18 at the time. And so, he basically put us down, and like we met those dudes, and they were all so young. Like we were in college, and they were, I think, like 16 years old. They were like all dropping out of high school and stuff just to make rap and draw comic books. And, it wasn't until we met them, and then through them, we met Cryptic and his crew, which was Center of the Web, that we really started getting involved, because Cryptic was closer to our age and they were all closer to our age. So we were able to, to sort of like build a stronger relationship.
Yeah.
We were good, I was good friends with Vast and Portal and even Osiris, but they were a lot younger, so there was areas that we couldn't really connect, like they couldn't go out to a bar with us, or, they couldn't we couldn't go hang out and drink and try to kick at the girls or whatever we used to do back then. And, Cryptic and Jest and Molecule and Witchcraft, we could all go and do that. So I think it was once we got in with the Center of the Web guys, like that portion of Adam's family, that's when things really started to take off. And, we started, at the time, Adam's family was like a 35-member crew. And we ended up like trimming it down, because there was like just people that weren't active. And there was like just weird beef starting because of people that were on the fringes starting beef with other people. And it was like, we never even met these people. So we cut it down to the 8 of us. It was like me, Vast, Portal, Cryptic, Wind and Breeze, and I feel like there's somebody else I'm missing, but there's like a few other guys, Jest, and one or two other people that came in and out, and that was when things really started getting serious. There was actually a point where Apathy was in Adam's Family for a couple of weeks.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was like right around that time when we were cutting everything down, and he was brought in by one of the people that was getting cut out.
Mm.
So it was a weird thing. I always felt kind of bad about the way it went down, because it was kind of shitty, like here's this kid, he's like fucking super dope, and then we're like, nah, get out, you can't be in. It was kind of like a real dick move on our part, but I think he did all right.
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by that scene. Just like, I feel like I probably heard it in like a Company Flow song, like New Eureka Poets Cafe, and then to find out later that like so much shit like happened there.
Yeah, it was a real like centralized point, I think, for that scene. And it's kind of crazy, like all the people that came through there, like the Juggernauts would be there, Company Flow wasn't at New Eureka that much, but they were around. There was like other places like Wetlands, and Brownies was a place for a while. Like there's always sort of like little clubs downtown that would pop up and open and then close, and they were all part of that thing. Same thing with Aesop. Like Aesop just sort of showed up one day and was like, who the hell is this guy? Why is he so good? And it was just all these sort of artists coming together and having styles and working together and becoming friends and bouncing ideas off each other. It was a pretty cool time. And we all were at that age where we were just like, we had our own places. We were all struggling. So it was kind of cool. It was like, this is our crew of people. This is our tribe. We found our tribe, and we're all sort of trying to make our way here.
I asked someone else this before. It might have been Cryptic One. When you first seen, or like when you were hanging out with guys like Aesop or LP before, they were huge. Could you like tell, like, this guy's gonna be the next thing, type of?
I think, but I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just like, like when you meet someone for the first time, or like you see him perform and you're just like, oh, this guy's going somewhere.
I mean, by the time we met L, he already was somewhere. I think like he was kind of like a hero, at least for me. I was like, holy shit! Like when I first heard his music, it changed the way I looked at everything, as far as hip hop was concerned. And then once I got to meet him, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I know this guy. Like, I've been on stage with him. I didn't really like him when I met him. But as I got to know him, I've grown to like him quite a bit. I mean, I haven't seen him in a few years, but I think he's a real solid dude, and he's really, really good and caring. And a lot of like that persona that you hear on record was strongly out there when he was young. I think it was like, to protect himself, which is understandable. But I think hearing Aesop, I knew that he was going to be big, and Yishwan Sire, I knew that they were going to be big. And then once I heard Vast on an actual track, I knew he was going to be big. Like before that, like when we used to all just like, there were a lot of the times we would just all get up and hang out in a diner and rap together for like 8 hours.
Wow.
And like kick our newest verses and whatever. And he was really dope, but I guess the way that he had it visualized on track,
you
can't do that like sitting in a diner. So like when you actually heard him, like the way his verses were constructed to be on a track, I realized that he had something special. But
and,
I think those are the guys that really like just that I knew that I was like, okay, these guys are going to do something.
And was it around this time that you started like recording, like making like songs and stuff?
Yeah, it was once we got in with the Center of the Web guys, because Cryptic had the studio and made the beats, so he was sort of the de facto leader of everything. I don't think he wanted to be, but he ended up being that because of who he, what he had and his know-how. Like he had already put out records and he knew how to do everything. So I think by default he became the leader. But that's when we started making tracks. We had a lot of tracks that ended up nothing ever happened with them. I think we just weren't really confident and that, we didn't know
Yeah.
that you're supposed to let go of things
Mm.
once they're recorded. And I think, we have 8 guys with 8 different ideas, and everybody wants to kind of be the leader.
Yeah.
Sometimes it leads to some friction and things just not getting done. But that was the time that we started recording a lot. We used to just every weekend we would all go to Cryptic's house and camp out there for like 3 days and just record. Like get there Friday night, record until like 1 a.m. on Sunday, and leave. We might only come out from the weekend with a song and a half, but it was a good bonding period and learning period.
Was your style changing much, or did you kind of have a thing right
At that point? Yeah, I think it was. I think I had gone when I first started rapping. I was like a real punchline rapper.
Mm.
So it was like a bar set up, a bar punchline, bar set up, bar punchline, and then by then I started getting really into the wordplay and trying to have like deeper meaning and sort of like a real anti-authoritarian stance and anti-everything stance, which I think I still carry a lot. It's just matured a bit, but with Adam's Family, a lot of the stuff was just wordplay and trying to be clever and saying something in a way that was more interesting than other people would say it. I don't think I was necessarily saying anything interesting, but it's just a way of saying I'm dope better than anybody else. And at that point, I was learning how to count bars, how to actually construct songs. So the style was changing to fit that in the actual sort of the track more than just being a showcase for how clever I was. And I think we all were kind of figuring that out at that time. You can hear it in the evolution, I think, from the prequel. Some of the earlier stuff that was recorded on the prequel as, towards the later stuff, which was I think Mike Molest and stuff like that was on the prequel. Those were the last few songs that we recorded. You could kind of see the evolution in all of our styles at that point.
Aside from music and hip hop, was there anything you were reading or watching?
Back then?
Yeah. Watching movie wise or that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think just a lot of the sort of sci-fi dystopian stuff. I think that was around the Matrix, Dark City. What else? Jeez. Those guys were really into Blade Runner. I kind of think Blade Runner sucks. I know that's exactly to say, but I've never been able to stay awake through the whole movie. There's a lot of sci-fi stuff. Books I was reading weird sort of, I guess, not new agey books necessarily, but Carlos Castaneda books, and sort of stuff like that. I think I tried to read Behold the Pale Horse, but I couldn't get past the first chapter. Things like that, spiritual journeys and things like that, a lot of metaphors for things. That type of stuff I was into at that time. And I think we all were. We kind of fed off of that, and you could kind of hear it in some of our rapping as well. And then,
So was this around the time of Def Jux coming together, or still before?
This was still before Def Jux. I think in some ways L was forming it, because we dropped the prequel, and then I think at some point Vast and Portal became really tight with LP, and they started recording together, and that's when Def Jux was starting, when those guys all started working together. So that was probably around 99 maybe. I think the album came out in 2000 or 2001. So yeah, it was around 99 that they got tight and started working together, and then from there, I think just the circle started getting tighter and tighter, and everybody coming into this one orbit of that movement. It started happening around that time. So it was the Adams Family stuff. We got to a point where Adams dropped that prequel album. I think we dropped a vinyl called Persecution of Hip Hop before that, which I don't know if a lot of people know about that one. But it was a compilation record. It had a bunch of Adams songs on it, but then it had I think it had I forgot the name of their group, but it was Slug, Dose, and Soul. Deepwater Dynamics, maybe something like that.
Mm.
There was one of the first Deepwater Dynamics songs, and a bunch of other sort of rando groups that were around for a week or two and then disappeared. But that was our first thing. We dropped the prequel after that, and then from there, we started like getting tighter and tighter in the scene, and the scene started growing, and everybody started circling off into their groups, and we were part of the Deftooks group.
Were you doing much solo recording, like outside of Adam's Fam?
I actually, it's funny, the Hangar 18 stuff started as a solo record. Because Wind and Breeze he had gone back to college at that time, so he was away. And I had met Paul, who was the producer on Hangar 18's album. And I was throwing shows at the time in the city. Like, I had a couple like little like monthly shows here and there. And he had given me a beat tape, and it was sitting on my dresser forever. I threw it on, and I just basically started writing to it. So we were working on a solo record. Long story short, working on a solo record. Wind and Breeze came in, and he dropped the guest verse, and then he was really into Paul. Paul was really into Wind. We were all really into the sound, and the solo record turned into the first Hangar 18 record. And that was, all around that time. Like, it was still a close knit crew. Like, even ASAP was working on his record. I think that maybe we were just getting ready to do the Robot Store. And so this was probably like around 2001. Like, it was I probably met him like late 2001, early 2002. And and we started working together. Those guys were on tour, and ASAP played the demos that we had for L. And L reached out to us and said he wanted to do a record. So that's how we ended up over there. It was really just like being in that circle and people sharing stuff. Like, it was kind of one of the cool things. You got everybody's music before it ever came out. And so that's sort of how that happened.
Was there because I was just thinking about this earlier. I never realized kind of how divided Def Jux was, or like the artists seem to like kind of just stick to working with certain other artists. It seems. Were there any guys you were good friends with that you just never worked with, or like something just never happened?
I think it was kind of a weird time when we came into Def Jux. It was like things just started, like, it took off really quick, and then it sort of hit this weird wall. Like, there were some well-documented issues. I think there was the thing with Cannibal Ox where Mortal got attacked at one of the shows, and he got, like, his jaw, and he broke his jaw and his leg. And that basically, like, ended any momentum that they had. And then 9/11 happened, and A$AP Rock had a lot of anxiety issues, so that like sort of slowed the momentum with Labor Days. And once that started happening, everybody sort of, I think, sectioned off a little bit. So everybody was still cool. Like, we would all do these big shows together and hang out. But I think in some way, I think it turned everybody's recording processes a little more inward. So we would do stuff here and there, but it wasn't like we were all recording together. I think everybody was sort of in their own pockets as far as recording went. Some people would be on tracks, like LP would do a remix for us, or he would jump on a B-side. But I think more like there were tiers, and I think that was sort of the way it was. Like, so there was the first wave of guys, and then there was the second wave of guys, which were like us and Rob Sonic and FA Smash. And then, even like beyond that, I think there was like a third wave of guys, which was like Cool Calm Pete and those guys. So it was like, everybody sort of stayed with their wave as far as like, working together and stuff like that. Like, we would all do shows together, all hang out, and it was all good and, friendly and everything like that. But it just sort of, it seemed like everybody sort of like fell into their compartments. After a while, like Rob Sonic and I were really tight for a long time. We'd go out and record together, drink together, do shows together. That was sort of like my crew. It was like Hangar 18, Rob Sonic, and then the Adam's Fam guys. And then, obviously we would all get together for the shows. And it wasn't until much later that I got pretty tight with L and, Cage and those guys. It wasn't until we started touring with them more that, had a relationship with them beyond, the shows.
Mm. Could you talk a little bit about, doing shows and touring? You mentioned something in adult rappers, and you kind of like said depression. So I don't know like how you, cause turn like how exactly you meant it, but doing stand up, I kind of realized that the other night of like I was on stage and it went great, and I was like, oh shit, I need this. Like,
Yeah.
there's this weird thing of like I like need this, like response from people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's like a high to it, right? There's like,
Yeah.
it's just like crazy endorphin rush, and it's like, I mean, I imagine it's like just being any sort of an addict. Like you get these like dopamine rushes and endorphin rushes, and then when you come down, it's just like, fuck, everything sucks.
Mm.
So I think that's how it was with touring, because you're feeding that monster over and over and over again, like 30, 40 nights in a row. And then, like, literally you get home and there's nothing going on. You're just sitting around waiting for the next thing to happen. And, even when things happen, like, a lot of us had temp jobs to help pay the bills because we weren't making a ton of money like that. But, you're temping and you're taking shit from people that you're like, fuck you. You don't know who I am. But it was a lot of highs and lows. Like the highs were really amazing and awesome. And, you're playing in front of 1,000 people, and then, they're all coming to the merch booth and buying your merch and talking to you, and you're signing autographs, and, people are telling you how you helped them get through a tough time. I remember one time we were playing a show, I think it was in maybe Kansas City, and some dude came up to me, and he had like just got back from Iraq, and like his leg was blown off, and he had me sign his prosthetic leg and shit, and was telling me like how songs on the Hangar 18 record really helped him. I was like, God, that's crazy. Like, I'm just an idiot. And, like those things happen, and then you go home and it's like, oh, I barely have enough money to pay a bill, and I gotta be up at 8:00 in the morning, and I'm hungover, and this sucks. So it's like there's no consistency to it. I think is a big part of it. And I think that it's probably like anything. If you're an athlete, if you're a comedian, if you have an outlet where you get like a rush from what you're doing,
yeah,
it kind of sucks when you're not getting that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about drinking and how hard that the touring is with stuff like that.
I'm sorry, you said drinking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty rough, man, because you end up drinking every single night. And it'll be like, depending on how long the tour is, it's, 2 weeks, it could be 30 days, it could be 40 days, 45, whatever it is. And it's like, it's excessive. You don't plan on it, but, you go to the venue and you do your sound check and you're waiting around for like 2-3 hours. You kind of have a beer or two, and then you get on stage, you bring a couple beers on stage, but then you have like 5 beers, and then sit around for another 4 hours, and it's like,
yeah.
By the time you get out of there, you've had 12 back. It's just night after night after night. It's not a healthy way to live.
Yeah, that's
I mean, obviously we didn't have to live that way.
But that's
we chose to, but
that's the fun of it, right?
Yeah, I think so, because it's so boring. Being on the road, a lot of being on the road is just boring. It's driving, it's getting to a venue, sitting around waiting, doing a sound check, sitting around waiting some more. You do your show. That whole portion of it is cool. From when people get there to when people leave, it's cool. And then you're sitting around again. And it's just a lot of sitting around and waiting for things to happen. Excuse me. Yeah, it leads to bad habits. And then you get home and you're dealing with that post-tour depression. So what are you going to do? Go out and drink. And then, next thing you know, you've been drinking, 60, 70, 80 nights straight.
Yeah, that's how it is with stand-up, with just, you're pretty much always in a bar. So it's like, I guess I'm going to drink.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if I'm not drinking, I'm going to smoke a cigarette.
Yeah.
It's just like anything to make the time move.
I think you mentioned in adult rappers losing money. At what point do you I don't know how do you keep yourself going sometimes when you're just like this is or do you ever feel that like you're just like what am I doing?
I mean, at that back then I did because it was once it stopped being fun, it was it was fun for a while. It's like I wasn't beholden to anybody. I didn't have family. I didn't have anybody that I needed to support or take care of or worry about. So it was like if my rent's a month late, my rent's a month late. I'll deal with it. It's just me. I was doing what I loved. We always had stuff coming up down the line. At some point, you'd be able to like sublet your apartment and, cover the rent, try to get your living situation as cheap as possible. But once it stopped being fun is when it was just unacceptable. It's like, I can't live like this where I'm wondering how I'm going to survive from week to week and then hate what I'm doing. I think critics said it best. Like I could hate what I'm doing and actually make money. But it's like, I think once it stopped being, I guess like a cost or value, like the value wasn't worth the cost anymore. And that sort of ended everything. Like, I think it ended Hangar 18, I think, like in general. I think, by the time we finished with the last tour, the joy wasn't there anymore. I know it wasn't for me, and I don't think it was for Wind. And, in some ways it was a money issue. In some ways it was just like, after working together for 10 years, we were kind of different people than where we started. And it was we just sort of had to end it at that, instead of going on and just, half-assing it. So I don't know when you just know. Like I don't think there's any way you can put a value on it. I think it's like being an addict. Everybody has their own bottom. And then when you hit it, you're like, all right, I'm out. Gave it my best, and here I am. I got to end this.
So did you take a full-on break from music?
Yeah, I took a huge break. I mean, I thought I was done. By the time it had all ended, I was in like a really low place. I was drinking a lot. Like I remember being just in bars by myself, like drinking, and just being like, "Fuck, this is how it's going to end. Like I'm just going to be like the old drunk guy in a bar. This is going to suck." And we had made a record that wasn't a very good record. It was like a lot of compromise, and it wasn't like compromise that anybody put on us. We put it on ourselves. We had spent so much time touring that we were like looking at art with the eyes of it being a product instead of it being a statement. So it was like, all right, we got to have these type of performances. We got to have these types of songs. We got to have these things that'll be great for the show. We got to have like guest appearances. We got to have a dance song. We got to have a girl song. We got to have this. And it became this album that wasn't very centered. It wasn't very interesting. It was just like, eh. And I decided I wanted to make a solo record because I didn't want to make that my last thing, and I wanted to make an album that I wanted to hear, and it was like just what I wanted to say. I didn't give a shit if anybody even heard it. And I started working with this dude named Kojo, and we started a little group called the Crack Epidemic, and we put out 2 records. I don't know how many people heard them, but by that time I started like coming out of my depression, and I got back together with my girlfriend, and we went away, and we came back from vacation with a baby. So I had basically I had 9 months to get it together, and I had to just leave music alone. I had too many things I had to take care of in myself to worry about music or worry about anything like that. The lifestyle that I had built up around it wasn't healthy. It wasn't something that was conducive to being a father, being a husband and a partner, or even just being a grown up. I had to just dead that. So I've lost track with pretty much everybody that I was friends with. I just really had to walk away. And I did that. I walked away for probably like 3 or 4 years. I started writing about music. I started a music blog called Siffle,
Oh yeah.
with my friend Joel, and we just like wrote about music. Like he was in the same boat. Like he was a musician. He played guitar in this group called Rubber Room out of Chicago, and we both were in the same place. Like he had a family, and he was just like sort of done with it. But we both loved music, so we wanted to keep, talking about it and being involved in it and getting it and having a reason to listen to it. So we started that website, and then I left after about 3 years. I was just couldn't write about music anymore. I just, it kind of it's there's that old saying, like, if you work in an ice cream parlor, you're going to end up hating ice cream.
Mm.
And with the website, that's how I got the same way. I was like, oh fuck, I hate other people's music, and I just wanted to go back to making my own music again, and started that process. Probably like 3 years later, I just started writing again. It was right around Adult Rappers, actually. Paul Cryptic was doing a lot of the music on Adult Rappers, and Paul had asked me to do a song over one of the beats, and then I asked Cryptic to get on it, and we asked Wyndham Breeze to get on it, and then next thing you know, we made a song, and then we made an album, and then it just kept rolling from there. So yeah, there was like an Adams album that came out. It was just me, Wyndham, Cryptic, and from there I just started doing more and more solo stuff. I had a whole bunch of starts and stops with a bunch of different producers. Some of the material I didn't think was very good, and some of the material that I thought was really good, the producers flaked out. Eventually I met the dude Langfo, and I had this project that I worked on over all Outkast beats, and I was calling it Alcast because, Alaskan Outkast pretty clever. And he was mixing it for me, so I sent him all the files, and then a couple weeks later he sent me remixes of everything, and that sort of started Words Hurt, and from there that's what I've been doing.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, your music, what made you go for Outkast?
I thought the name was funny, mostly. I mean, I like their beats, but I think mostly I had like a couple songs written with another producer that fell through, and I was driving and some Outkast song came on, and I started rapping to it. I was like, oh, that would be cool. That might work with that beat. And then I just started picking out other Outkast beats that I liked or that I was able to find, and yeah, it just started driving. I think I was moving the car because it was alternate side parking, and that little moment being in the car with an Outkast song. That's the project.
What's your writing process like, if you have one?
I think it's changed over the years. It used to just be like I would write. When I started, I wrote with no beat. I used to work on a beer truck when I was in college. My dad had a beer route. He was always like a delivery guy, and I worked with him. And, so there was a lot of time I was just driving, and I'd have these pieces of paper. I'd just scribble rhymes, and eventually put them all together. Hangar 18, we would just sit around and drink and write together. But my process lately has been I write on the train. I have an hour commute in the morning, an hour commute home. So, I'll just basically sit and I'll write songs. A lot of times I'll write like a full album and then scrap it, take the best parts of that album, put those together, and then, write some more to get it where I want it to be. So that's sort of the writing process. The way Lang and I work, because Lang has 6 kids, because he's a fucking maniac, and I have a kid, and time is sparse. So I usually just write to other people's beats. Like we sort of do what we did with the Outkast project. I'll find beats that I want to write to. I'll write to those beats. I'll record a demo on it. I send it over to him, and then he'll make a beat to it. So it's like the beat, is constructed to the verse, which is kind of cool. It's a bit of a different process. Mm. He'll send it back to me. I'll re-record it to make it fit better, and then, that's the song. And then he mixes and adds and chops it all up and things like that. It's kind of an interesting process. I like it. It's I find now when I have to write to somebody's beat, it's a lot of pressure
Mm.
I don't know why. Like when I'm writing to a random instrumental, if like I find like a Rick Ross instrumental or something I like and I write for that, there's no pressure to it. It's not like it's just for me at that point. I'm the only person that's going to hear it. But if I'm writing to somebody else's stuff, I feel like I have expectations upon me.
Mm.
And in some ways, it censors the way I write. It's stupid, I know, but it's just sort of the process I find comfort in.
You do this. I like this thing you do. I don't know if you do it for all your songs, but you put your lyrics out.
Yeah.
What was behind that?
I think sometimes I can't understand myself, and I'm worried other people can't understand me. So I want it to be there. I remember I know it's digital now, so it's a little different. But growing up, and whenever I bought albums, I would just you would take out either the cassette or the CD or whatever, and there would always be lyric sheets in there.
Yeah.
And I just liked sitting with the music and having the words and reading along to it because I don't know, I feel like there's something real like tactile and nice to that experience. I think even seeing the way that the words are written down, like especially with rap music, like I remember looking at like the way Aesop writes, or when you're all working together in the studio, you see other people's rhymes hanging on the wall. Now everybody has them on their phone, but back in the day, like just the way that people would write their rhymes and the way they would format the writing, I always thought it was interesting to see how it's formatted in your head. I think when you write it down, that's the way it's formatted in your head. And I feel like something interesting about it. Not necessarily that my words are interesting, but just it's part of the process. And I remember as a fan liking it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're doing this song a month with Cryptic One.
Yeah.
And use obviously like we talked about Atmosphere and everything. What do you have collaborated a lot? What do you think makes that relationship work?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
You have collaborated a lot. What do you think makes that relationship work?
With Cryptic and I? Or Adams?
You and Cryptic.
I think Cryptic and I don't know. It's a weird friendship Cryptic and I have. Like, we don't see each other that often. But I think we both have this sort of approach of like, let's just get shit done. And, like, we both like each other's style. I love his production. And yeah, I think our styles kind of connect well together. I think they always have. I think if you go back to like a lot of the Adams stuff, like the Adams archive stuff that he has, there's a lot of it songs in there. And something about our style clicks really well. And we'd always been like, I'd always been at Hangar 18. He had always been a solo artist or center of the web. And for some reason, there was like a little window when we were going to do an Ed project, and it was back, when you had to actually press vinyl, and neither of us had money. So it never happened. It got sidetracked for other stuff. But I think since those days, we've always just had our styles work well. Like, we're both sort of like similar in our approach. We both have a lot of wordplay, or at least we did back then. But I think we also have similar worldviews. Like, he's a little bit more, like, I guess we both have a darker and cynical worldview, but his approach is more like wordplay about it, and mine is more sort of like reserved comedy about it. But I think it just something about it, like, it bounces well off of each other. I just like working with him. Like, he's really no nonsense. He's just like, there's no ego, there's no bullshit. Like, neither of us have ego, neither of us is this. It's like, if somebody has a good idea, we run with it, and that's just the way it works. So you find a lot of times when you work with people, even people you think you'd be able to work well with, it just doesn't work because of approach and ego, or not even ego, I guess just the way you envision the art, and it sometimes just doesn't connect well. But Cryptic and I, for some reason, click. Yeah. I really like his style and everything that he does, and I think there's a mutual respect and feeling in that.
On the Bandcamp page for Words Heard, it one of the things that says spite and self-deprecation, and also on the shut your fucking face and listen recent interview, you were described as a grumpy piece of shit, an asshole, and brutally honest. And I was wondering how accurate that is.
I think in some ways it's accurate. Like I don't. People think I'm grumpy, but I don't feel grumpy. Like I'm not angry or upset. I think I just kind of come across gruff. Like I don't know. Like I don't really suffer fools. And like even like if it's just like a regular conversation and there's something I don't agree with, like I'll be like that shit sucks, or you know like that's fucking stupid. But it's not meant from a place of like trying to belittle the person. It's just sort of like the way I express myself. I don't know. I think I've always been sort of upfront. I don't like wasting people's time. And I think a lot of that comes from when I was younger. I was really concerned about what people thought about me. And, you know, I saw that with my parents. Like my parents are both children of alcoholics, so they both have that thing where like they want everything to be perfect. They're so worried about what everybody thinks. And, you know, I'd rather just be honest and like not have to deal with that sort of nervous energy and that concern of like this person might not like me, or you know I'm going to hold back these feelings I have, or like I don't go out of my way to try to hurt people. Like I don't try to like you know see somebody with an ugly shirt and be like your shirt's fucking stupid. But if I'm in a conversation with somebody and it's my opinion is asked, I'll be honest with you. Like I'm not trying to hurt you, but you know I'll tell you what I think. Like I'm not like one of those like I'm keeping it real like and shitting on everybody for every little thing, but you know, if you share something with me and ask me what I think of it, I'll tell you what I think of it. You know, I mean, if it's art that somebody created, I will obviously try to like temper my response because I understand what that is. But I still want to give you an honest feedback because I appreciate when I get that kind of feedback. And, you know, so people think I'm grumpy because of that. Long story short, like they think I'm grumpy and, you know, because they think I'm grumpy, I'm like, oh, I must just be an asshole. So I don't care. I'm too old to give a fuck about what people think about me.
Also in that interview, you talked about like individuality, but also like, you know, there's just that cliche of like every generation's like, oh, this generation's music is, you know, and I wanted to ask you, having a daughter, or just like kid in general, what role do you think you'll play in her life/music decisions?
I kind of let her listen to what she wants to listen to. I don't, you know, I found my own path. You know, like the music I listened to wasn't music that anybody really introduced me to. It was just what I found that I liked. And, you know, she's really into music. She sings all the time. She plays piano and, I just let her do what she's into. Like, I think that's how you find your voice and what you want. Like, other people trying to force you to listen to things. Like, I'll show her stuff, but, you know, she's not really into what I'm into. Like, I like weird old rap music, you know, but if she, I always try to have music on in the background. Like, I'll play, like, jazz in the background and stuff. She's like, fuck jazz, that sucks. I mean, she doesn't say fuck, but, she's like, oh, can you just play like Taylor Swift or Hamilton? Like she's super into the Hamilton soundtrack, and I hated the Hamilton soundtrack, but she likes it, and it's a gateway into rap music, I guess, and it's, you know, a learning experience. She loves Taylor Swift, and I'm like, okay, I don't really, you know, I like some Taylor Swift songs. I've grown to like them because she plays them so much, but yeah, I don't want to put my shit on her. I want her to be able to find her own way. And like I don't know, I'm not of the mind where like the kids suck. I think like, you know, we suck. Like us old people suck. We're all set in our ways and like this is their thing, man. Let them have it. Like it's not for us, it's their thing. Let them find out what's good and what they like, and it's gonna, you know, morph. Like this mumblecore shit is corny, but some of it you're getting cool production. And eventually that's gonna take a step into, all right, we got this cool production, but maybe we get like a dope rapper on it. Like that's how things happen. Like commercial shit keeps getting worse and worse and worse and worse. But if you dig a little bit below the surface, you're gonna find a lot of dope shit. Like, I don't know. Personally, I think rap is just as good as it's ever been right now. Like rap is so fucking good right now that anytime somebody's like, "Oh, rap sucks," it's not like it used to be. I'm like, you just don't fucking listen. And thank God it's not like it used to be, because who wants to listen to the same shit like 20 years later? Like, you know, I loved Lords of the Underground in 1992, but I listen to it now and I'm like, whatever. You know, so just like you got Mike Eagle and you got Milo and you got Elucid and you got Moses Rockwell and you got just like all this fucking great music out there. It's like, why are you worried about what's not there? Enjoy what is there.
Yeah, it was you tweeted something about like you know, you're not exactly you're listening to new rap music even if you're not like right at the moment. You were like, I have a bunch of albums sitting around I need to get to, but you're still like listening to new stuff. Yeah,
there's so much good stuff. It's coming out so quickly. It's just like constantly new stuff over and over and over again. It's all so good. I'm just so jealous of it. I'm so mad. Like every time I hear it, I'm like, fuck. How did you do that? I can't even like figure out the flows. I'm like, God damn it. So I'm just like this old like guy over here being grumpy, and you guys are full of life and excitement. It's awesome.
And speaking of new music, you have some stuff coming out in the future?
Yes, I do. I have, we're putting the final touches on the new Words Heard album right now, which is probably going to come out in November. We don't have a finalized date yet, but it's called Soul Music for the Soulless. And then I also have another project. We actually pushed it back to the spring. It's a record I recorded for a label called Pig Food Records, and it's with a producer named PJ Katz. I actually recorded it like 5 years ago, I think. I think we recorded it in like 2012. And it's just, you know, it's a small indie label, so you have to wait for, I was fourth or fifth in line on the project at the time, and you just have to wait, you know, because it's a small indie label, so they can only put stuff out as they can put it out. But I'm on deck, so that's good. And that album is called He's the PJ, I'm Alaska. It's a take on the He's the DJ, I'm a Rapper album by Jeffy Jeff from Fresh Prince, and we ate the cover work and everything, so it's kind of dope, and it stands up. I'm pretty happy with it. It's like a 5-year-old album that I can still listen to. And it's like it's the album I wish I could have made in the 90s if I was good enough.
That's awesome.
And then, you know, the stuff with Chris Nicks, that's every month, which is always fun.
Is there anything you'd like to say? Or
anything?
Just anything you'd like to put out there or plug? Or
I think that everybody should listen to the new Zilla Rocca record, which is really good. Well, not Zilla Rocca, Career Crooks, Zilla Rocca and Small Pro. That album is amazing. Listen to the new Milo, listen to the new Mike Eagle, listen to my homie Desmatic, who is dropping a track a month as well. And just like listen to jazz music and stuff. There's a lot of good jazz music out there that's coming out right now. Yeah, but mostly just like find what you love and don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks, and you know, stop pretending that stuff that critics are telling you to listen to is good. Find your own shit. Who gives a fuck what some critic says? They all take a ride the same shit and tell you how great Solange is, and she's kind of shitty.
Well, thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, no problem at all. Thank you again for having me.